In the depths of the Eldridge Forest lies a place that defies scientific explanation. A clearing where reality bends, and something ancient hungers not for flesh, but for the very essence of human consciousness. When biologist Elliot ventured into this anomaly known as the echoing, armed with only his recorder and skepticism, he never imagined he would capture evidence of an entity that can perfectly mimic its victims. But the most chilling part of this story isn't what Elliot discovered in that clearing. It's the haunting possibility that what returned from the forest that day wasn't entirely Elliot anymore. In the heart of the Eldridge Forest, where the trees grow tall and the shadows stretch long, there exists a clearing that no map has ever marked. The locals call it the Echoing, a place where the air hums with an otherworldly resonance, and the ground seems to pulse faintly beneath your feet. Those who stumble upon it often speak of a strange magnetic pull, a feeling that something is watching, waiting and listening. But the most unsettling part, the echoing doesn't just watch, it learns. Elliot was a biologist, a man of science who scoffed at superstition. When he heard the stories about the echoing, he dismissed them as folklore, the kind of tale told to keep children from wandering too far into the woods. But when a hiker went missing near the forest, leaving behind only a single cryptic note, it knows what I know. Elliot's curiosity got the better of him. He packed his gear, including a high-quality recorder, and set out to find the clearing. The forest was unnervingly quiet. No birdsong, no rustling leaves, just the occasional creak of ancient trees swaying in the wind. Elliot's compass spun wildly and his GPS failed entirely. He relied on instinct, following a faint, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to grow louder the deeper he went. Finally he found it, a circular clearing bathed in an eerie, silvery light. The air felt charged, like the moments before a storm, and the ground was covered in a fine black ash that crunched under his boots. Elliot set up his equipment, determined to document the phenomenon. As he adjusted his recorder, he noticed something strange. The hum wasn't just in the air, it was in his head. It was as if the clearing was tuning itself to him, matching the frequency of his thoughts. He shook off the sensation and began to speak into the recorder, describing the clearing and its odd properties. That's when he heard it, a voice faint but unmistakable, repeating his words back to him. At first it was just an echo, but then it began to change. The voice shifted, morphing into something that sounded almost human, but wasn't quite right. It spoke in his own voice, but the words were twisted, as if the clearing was trying to communicate, but didn't understand how. "What are you?" The voice responded, but not with his words. It spoke in a language he didn't recognize, a series of guttural clicks and hisses that sent a chill down his spine. Then the ground beneath him began to tremble, and the air grew thick with a metallic smell. From the center of the clearing, something began to rise, a shape dark and amorphous, shifting and writhing as if made of liquid shadow. Elliot stumbled back, his recorder still running. The creature, if it could be called that, had no fixed form. It was a living void, a patch of darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. But the most horrifying part was its face, if it could even be called that. It was a swirling, ever-changing mosaic of features, eyes, mouths, hands, all of them familiar. They were the faces of people who had come before, their features distorted and stretched, as if the creature had absorbed them and was now wearing their memories like a mask. Elliot, you seek to understand, but understanding is a burden. Would you like to see? Before he could respond, the creature lunged at him, not with claws or teeth, but with something far worse. It reached into his mind. Images flooded his thoughts, not his own, but those of others who had come before. He saw through their eyes, felt their terror as the creature consumed them, not their bodies, but their memories, their knowledge, their very essence. It was a predator, but not of flesh. It fed on consciousness. Elliot screamed, but no sound came out. The creature was inside him, rifling through his mind like pages in a book. He felt himself unraveling, his thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. Elliot's face contorted in silent horror. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The creature withdrew, retreating back into the void from which it came. The clearing fell silent, the hum fading into nothingness. Elliot collapsed, his body trembling. He didn't know how long he lay there, but when he finally regained the strength to move, he grabbed his recorder and fled. He didn't stop running until he was out of the forest, his heart pounding and his mind racing. Back at his lab, Elliot played the recording. It started normally, with his voice describing the clearing, but as the creature emerged, the audio became distorted, filled with static and strange overlapping voices. At the very end, just before the recording cut out, he heard something that made his blood run cold. "I'm you and you are mine." Elliot tried to forget what he had seen, but the creature's presence lingered in his mind like a stain. He began to notice gaps in his memory, moments where he couldn't remember what he had done or where he had been. And sometimes, in the dead of night, he would hear that voice again whispering in the back of his mind. He began to notice gaps in his memory, moments where he couldn't remember what he had done or where he had been, and sometimes, in the dead of night, he would hear that voice again, whispering in the back of his mind. "You are mine." The echoing is still out there, waiting. It doesn't just take, it learns, adapts, and evolves. And with every person it consumes, it grows stronger, more intelligent, more human. Some say it's a force of nature, a living embodiment of the forest itself. Others believe it's something far older, a remnant of a time when the world was young and the boundaries between life and death were blurred. But one thing is certain, if you hear the hum, if you feel the pull, turn back. Because once the echoing has you, it never lets go. And the worst part, you might not even realize it's there until it's too late.